Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to mismapasion, and the final group stage matches of the woso Olympics have taken place, with the quarterfinal stages now being set. But before we get to that, let's recap the action that took place on Wednesday, and we begin with Brazil versus Spain. In this match, the Seleção were vying for a spot in the quarterfinals as they were level on points with Japan, so they could not leave anything to chance, but standing in their way was none other than already qualified Spain. For the latter, this was nothing more than a dead rubber match, but that does not mean that they were going to put their foot on the brakes even though the majority of the squad had been rotated. The game began as well as you'd expect, with both teams going at it, with Brazil in particular obviously taking more of the early initiative with some great threat up front, particularly from the likes of Ludmilla, causing some early problems for the Spain defense, who at one point were bailed out by the goalpost and saved some early own goal roja of their own. The world champions eventually did shake off their early nerves and soon began playing in their usual manner, which yielded an eventually disallowed goal by Garcia due to being offside, but it was a warning shot for the Seleção. With the Spaniards continuing to bear down on them, Brazil were doing their best to bunker down, with the likes of Tarshan in particular being immense at the back at snuffing out any danger as quickly and effectively as possible. A watershed moment would eventually turn the tide of the match as the atmosphere soon turned sour, as woso legend Marta was shown a straight red for dangerous play after a foot connected with Carmona's head after trying to clear the ball away. With the specter of the unceremonious ending of Marta's international career, not much came out of the first half, but both sides soon shook it off and Brazil were emboldened despite being a player down, with two great shots coming against Katakoi, who managed to quell the opposition's advances. The first goal would finally come not too long after, but it would be in favor of Spain, as a well-worked team goal would be finished by Del Castillo, with Brazil goalie Lorena's attempt to swat the ball away being in vain. Brazil nevertheless continued to fight to the very end, with a few more opportunities coming their way that ultimately led to nothing positive, but did see key player Antonia eventually have to hobble off injured after pushing herself beyond the limits, which ultimately did signal the death knell for the Seleção, as not too long after being whittled down to 9 players, Alexia Putellas would make it 2-2 when it comes to amazing goals, as she put the stamp on a Spanish victory that continued Spain's unbeaten run in their maiden Olympics. And for Brazil, though they tasted defeat in their second consecutive match, they ultimately did not have to pack their bags early, as their performances and results elsewhere were more than enough to secure themselves one of the two best third place spots to book themselves a spot in the quarterfinals. Putting a bow on the Group C action, we had Japan take on Nigeria, with qualification being on the line for both teams. Japan needed the 3 points to guarantee themselves a spot in the quarterfinals, and Nigeria had to win by at least a difference of 2 goals to just be within a shout of qualifying for one of the third place spots in the quarterfinals. With so much being at stake, the match started off in a tense but composed manner, with both teams feeling each other out and looking to see who would blink first. The Super Falcons were as vigilant as ever at the back and were doing their best to snuff out the opposition whilst trying to weave some magic up front. But all their hard work was outdone in 3 passes, the third of which put the ball in the back of the net courtesy of Hamano, who put Japan in the driver's seat. And it would not be too long before the Nadeshiko resumed their celebrations, as a shot that rebounded off the top post fell to the feet of Tanaka, who did not need an invite to put in the back of the net despite Niger goalie Nadozi's failed attempts to claw it away. Once again, though down, Nigeria were not out, and appeared to have summoned a new wave of confidence after new PSG signing Onyi Echegini rifled in a goal to pull one back for the Falcons. The next few minutes from Nigeria were fast and furious, as Japan was suddenly on the back foot and was struggling to deal with it, and their reprieve would only come after a foul in Nigeria's half granted Japan a moment to take pause and calm the fierce opposition. The free kick itself ultimately proved to be more than just this though, as Kitagawa would take revenge for the last few minutes by scoring a sensational goal from the free kick to restore Japan's 2-goal cushion and all but guarantee Nigeria's early exit from the Olympics. The rest of the game did lose some momentum after this goal by Kitagawa, as Nigeria seemed to have run out of ideas when it came to going forward, and Japan were more than happy to play around with the ball so long as it meant that they kept things safe at the back for themselves. The match would ultimately end 3-1 and indeed would mean second place for Japan and an end to Nigeria's admittedly lackluster Olympic campaign, with coach Randy Waldrum really needing to look at how he can address the link from defense to attack, because ultimately Nigeria were failed by their inability to provide adequate service up top, as the theme of their attack over the group stages was just how disjointed and player dependent it all was. And before we get to the next game, well wishes and speedy recoveries to Deborah Abiodun, who was stretchered off during the second half. I did not see what could have caused the injury, but whatever it is, hopefully it is nothing that keeps her on the shelf for an extended period of time. Now, the next three matches on the recap are honestly just dead rubber matches, because as they were admittedly predictable, and there really was not much to write home about for either of them, as any surprise results that would have come from them would not have changed anything in terms of qualifying for the quarterfinals. So I'll just be quick with these next three, and we'll start this quick recap with Zambia versus Germany, and no bonus points for guessing that Germany ran out were the 4-1 winners, with goals coming from a Shula brace, a bull rocket that was hit fast and low from outside the box, and Sens coming off the bench to round out the goals for Germany, whilst Barbara Banda scored the consolation for the Copper Queens, whose miserable but memorable Olympics campaign came to an end. Following this, we had quite an alright encounter between France and New Zealand, which again was quite predictable as the French ran out 2-1 victors against inferior opposition. Credit must go to the football Ferns though, who, despite being eliminated prior to this game, they put up quite a spirited effort against France, which was accentuated by the chef's kiss of a goal by Katie Taylor, who saw the goals that the likes of Sands, Echegidi, and Puteas had scored during the day and decided that she wanted to be on the highlights reel as well. New Zealand continued to be one of my favorite underdogs in international football, and though they struggle against the bigger teams, with continued investment and improvements by the nation's federation, we will soon see the Ferns be able to hang with the big girls because the potential is definitely there to be exploited. And our final dead rubber match saw high-flying USA put dismal Australia out to pasture with a standard 2-1 victory, with goals coming from Rodman and Albert, with the latter appearing to have drank the same water that the aforementioned Echegidi and co drank, with her getting herself a highlights reel goal, with Kennedy managing to score the consolation for the Tillies, who bow out of the Olympics with a whimper, which also saw the end of Tony Gustafsson at the helm, as at the time of recording, the Australian Football Federation has announced that they will not extend his contract after mutual agreement. Given the poor showing by the Matildas over the last week, it's honestly for the best that they've parted ways with Gustafsson, because they look devoid of ideas and a fresh start might just be what's needed to lift up the Aussies and get them back on the right track. And finally, the main event of the day, which saw possibly the highest stakes on the line throughout the entirety of the group stages, as Canada took on Colombia. Yet again, both teams were looking for a win, but for Colombia, just a draw would be enough to solidify their spot in the quarterfinals. But for Canada, an outright win to qualify was needed to overcome the odds with their 6-point deduction over Dronegate. So to say that this match was emotionally charged would be an understatement, with the preamble going in being realized in the game itself. Canada, knowing what is on the line, were off to the races after the first whistle was blown, with the intention of catching the Pop-Off girls off guard and stealing an early lead. But the South American outfit were not going to allow themselves to be pushed over, as they managed to pour cold water over Canada's heat and apply pressure of their own, with none other than Linda Caicedo leading the charge and causing some trouble for the opposition, with her finding a dance partner in Jade Rose as the two clashed time and again on the flank, much to the delight of everyone watching. There was not much to split between the two teams throughout the entirety of the game, as neither was willing to give an inch to the other, and both sides by this point had manufactured decent opportunities to get themselves ahead, but to no avail. It seemed as though it was going to end in a stalemate, which would mean certain elimination for the Canucks, who were looking for a miracle at this point. And step up Little Miss Clutch herself, Vanessa Gilles, who headed home from flaming set piece to open the scoring for the game and breathe life into the Canucks' qualification hopes. As the clock ran down, Canada continued to rain down on a beleaguered Colombia, who by this point had lost their power in the face of the overwhelming odds of Canada, who ultimately ran out 1-0 to win and complete the comeback of a lifetime and secure their place in the quarterfinals with this victory. And if by the end of this match you're feeling sorry, even just a little bit for Colombia, then there's no need to worry, because they too managed to qualify for the quarterfinals by snagging the last third place position off the back of their excellent performances over the past week. And with the group stages now completed, it will be Spain, Japan, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, USA, Germany, and host France who have successfully made it into the quarterfinals of the Woso Olympics, with the quarterfinals taking place this coming Saturday, with former World Cup winners clashing in USA versus Japan, current world champion Spain clashing with Colombia, former gold medalist Germany taking on current gold medalist Canada, and home team France hosting Brazil. Some excellent encounters across the board if I do say so myself, and I, for one, cannot wait to watch them all. And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much as ever for watching. If you've enjoyed this recap, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts on these final group games and the upcoming quarterfinal games in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.